Hello again, we're back. This is Volume 2 of Eclectic Podcasts. I'm Jonathan Crass. I'm sitting here with Josh Holbrook. If you want to be a guest on our show, hit us up on the Eclectic Philosophies Facebook page. Give us a phone call if you have our numbers, or email us. My email is jcrass87@gmail.com. Josh's email is jholbrook10@hotmail.com. So without further ado,
it's another beautiful day. So I think that we wanted to kind of talk about, we kind of had to cut it short last time because the camera was running out of battery. But if we could just rehash for a moment some of the things that we were talking about last time towards the end there. I think what we were talking about was nationalism and patriotism and kind of the implications that has when it's so widespread, kind of the effects that it has on people. And I have an analogy that I was kind of telling you about this yesterday, but I think it's kind of a good analogy for viewing the way people think about our country, and kind of about the pride that we have, you know, the proud to be an American kind of mindset, you know. I just have a thought about that, and basically, just kind of hang with me while I try to explain it. I'm not sure the most eloquent way to put it, but to sum it up, here's the analogy. Non-Americans are like cancer patients, and that's an arbitrary disease, but just some sort of a disease, something unlucky, because being born in America, I mean, and it goes without saying that we are the most privileged country in the world, and you know, there's definitely you definitely have to be grateful for being born in America. Easily the most privileged people in the world, but it's a roll of the dice. You know, it's a total crapshoot. We didn't choose to be here, and nobody chooses to be born in a third world country, particularly a third world country. You know, and it's the same to me as people that are afflicted by some sort of a disease like cancer or something, that nobody chooses that. It's just kind of the roll of the dice, as so much is in this life. And I think to have pride in being an American kind of negates appreciation of that privilege. And because I don't see how people can have pride in anything that they didn't choose or create themselves. Like, you can have pride in something like a life decision that you made, something you choose, or you can have pride in something that you create, like art, or if you build a house. You can take pride in that, but I think it's ridiculous to take pride and be prideful about something that you had no part in choosing, something that you were just gifted when you were born. And so it's kind of like, why are we have this exclusivity where we think kind of that we're better than people in third world countries like Middle East or Asia, Africa, whatever, like, and I think it's kind of the prevailing thought in communities like this. I don't know how many times I've heard like the phrase, like, you know, let's just kill them all, let God sort them out, you know, let's turn that whole Middle East into a parking lot, or some ridiculous sentiment like that. But it's like, you don't have bumper stickers on your car saying proud to be cancer free, you know?
yeah.
Like, you don't bash people that have a disease and be like, oh, I'm so proud because I don't have a disease. I'm so proud that I don't have cancer. And that's the same thing when we're like, we're proud to be an American. It's like, just be grateful for it and have sympathy for the people that aren't born here, rather than have this pride about our little corner of the world, and that we think we're somehow better because you didn't choose to be an American. Nobody chooses to be an American. That's a gift that you were given when you were born. And I think it's stupid to have this hubris about being American and patriotism. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. Do you think that's a kind of an accurate analogy?
Yeah. You don't see flags in front of businesses. We're cancer free and stuff. I don't know. I mean, like, I get what you're saying. The problem I have with a lot of the mentalities of American people is, and this isn't everyone, it's kind of just a generalistic blanket statement. They were privileged to be born in this country. Whether this is the greatest country in the world, that's debatable, but
Sure.
We are definitely privileged, and rather than people being grateful and doing great things with their lives on the whole, it kind of devolves into this sense of entitlement, and everybody just kind of sits back on their laurels and expects everything to be handed from them, or handed to them, because our upbringings were easy, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think that a lot of people that might kind of fit that mindset would change their tune pretty quick were they to wake up tomorrow morning in a different body in a third world country and kind of realize, like, the struggle it is just to survive. And I mean, your family's dying of AIDS and starvation, and you'll be lucky to make it to, you'll be lucky to even grow up, let alone have kids of your own that are healthy, and let alone trying to have like creature comforts like we have, or entertainment. There's no entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
It's a daily survival. It really is kind of like a more archaic time, I think, in a lot of countries, because there's not that middle class escapism that we always revert to, in our free time. They don't have free time.
Well, yeah, this right here, right now.
Yeah.
So being able to, having the freedom to go somewhere and sit down and have a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That's an amenity that many people don't have. And it's easy to take stuff like that for granted,
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it. There's a lot of things that I should probably be more grateful for that I don't put the proper amount of thought to on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel the same way. It's tough. It's almost like we forget sometimes to stop and think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's something to be said for maybe being remiss and always being mindful of being that lucky. And the difference between that and just being downright boastful and arrogant and prideful about being American. Because there's a fine line there. There's a difference.
Yeah.
And although I think we probably take a lot of it for granted, but at the same time, we're not the type that are boastful or hateful to people at other parts of the world. And we try to, at least I try to think about things from their perspective, and like how do they view Americans? Well, I don't know. I think it's important to try to get to look at everything from the opposing side's view, and try to incorporate that into your own kind of perspective on the world. Because for us just to sit back here, like, in our kings in our castle and look down upon them, I think that's just I think that's seriously wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that like I was saying before, the 4th of July is coming up and holidays like that, and I think patriotism is a negative thing through and through. I think it's terrible. I think that it doesn't accomplish anything, because again, it's like it just it fuels the ego over something that you did not choose.
Yeah.
And you had no part in, and you didn't earn it, and you didn't create it. So, just be appreciative, but don't be prideful.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a good point there, fueling the ego. Looking at things from other people's perspectives and all that, it's essential to gaining a wider, more appropriate worldview. And there's kind of this ironic sense of detachment with a lot that goes on in the world here in America. I mean, you see horrifying stuff on the news every day. There's little to no reaction to it. Stuff going on in other countries, there's kind of like this attitude that people probably won't agree with in conversation, but if they're really honest with themselves, they kind of think, oh, well, it's okay as long as it's not happening to us, as long as it's not happening here. But, once you start breaking down the ego and stuff, there are some prevailing spiritual teachings that, say that we are all one consciousness, experiencing itself subjectively. We're basically just an imagination of ourselves, and that's the ego.
Yeah.
So it's important to break that stuff down and to feel the plight of humanity.
Yeah, I mean, we are one race, and that's why I think national barriers and national identities and all this type of stuff is it's no longer relevant. I think that it's time to evolve past that. We're one race, we're one planet, one little planet, and I think we could even, take that further and say that we're a member of a universal community. Really, we're a life that's appeared on this planet, and there's probably life in countless other areas of the universe, and like, it's just, I don't see the end game. I don't see the ultimate goal, what people are trying to get out of boxing ourselves into some exclusive little club. It just I don't see any good that can come from it, and I don't see any good that has come from it in our history. I think it's been negative at every turn.
Yeah, I agree. We're kind of getting to a point, though, where before, like we were just kind of talking about the apathy, and there's like little to no reaction to all this horrific stuff going on in the world. We're kind of reaching the point in our course of human history where it can no longer be ignored. There's so many people, so much plight out there that it just can't carry on under that old paradigm much longer. It's disintegrating before our very eyes. Political structures, everything.
Yeah.
The economic system, it's all crumbling, and it's because this old, archaic structure doesn't work anymore. And, it probably never really did, but there was the illusion that was there, that it was working, and now I think people are kind of starting to break through that illusion, and something has to change.
Yeah, and I think whatever becomes of humanity, it's going to be together. It's going to be with everybody else. We can either put all this nationalism aside and truly unite as one human race, and kind of evolve into that utopia.
Yeah.
Or else we can disintegrate, and we can kind of lose all the ground that we've gained and end up back in the Stone Age, or just completely obliterated ourselves, you know.
Start hurling nuclear bombs at
Yeah.
each other.
Either way, it's gonna be together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it is an
It's
illusion.
going to be unified destruction or unified
harmony,
change.
you know?
Yeah.
Exactly. And that is a good point, you know, that it is an illusion. It's always been an illusion, it always will be an illusion, but
it's a persistent illusion,
yeah,
nonetheless.
Yeah, it is. It's
as are so many illusions in life.
Ever present, but the truth of the matter is that it is, as technology evolves, it will be a unified fate for our race, and so let's just cut the shit and kind of get together, and you know, and hope that we can get to that bright future, you know, kind of that paradise that I think we totally can create here on Earth, because it is coming. It's either going to be destruction or paradise, and you know, everything in between is just kind of just a current path we're on right now, but it's leading somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Where is still up in the air, but we're on a set course for either destruction or unification.
Yeah. So something else that I've been thinking about, something I always kind of thought about, is it's kind of an ironic observation of the obligatory small talk that we engage in a lot of social situations, usually with people that you don't really know, or people maybe you know but you don't have too much of a connection with, but just kind of the kind of random small talk that seems to be very prevalent in most communication that we have with other people. I think probably the vast majority, I mean, if you think about it, the majority of the time you're talking to somebody, it's not really sitting down like this having a conversation, trying to like carve out some interesting reflections on life. It's usually kind of just inane small talk, observations about the weather, or you know,
sports teams,
just kind of these really just shallow base connections, I guess, that we feel like that we can talk to other people about, because most of the time I think we just assume that other people don't share in too many of our interests, and maybe we feel like we're I guess that kind of prevents us from maybe just randomly running into somebody and talking about something that you want to talk about, you know. So we kind of revert to just random small talk. Like, you know what I mean? You think of examples of that type of interaction?
Yeah, like just interactions with people that I don't know well. Maybe I know well that I don't have a lot in common with. Kind of feel like I'm on a different wavelength than a lot of people. But in those situations, there's a certain pressure that maybe I put on myself that, something has to be said.
Yeah.
We've got to talk about something. But nothing of real substance is ever really said.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's kind of sad that people don't have more I guess just deeper conversations. They don't exchange deeper thoughts really about anything. I don't like that there is just kind of this social custom of basically just bullshitting and talking about nothing, just to kind of fill the gap, to kind of fill the void. I'd prefer awkward silence or deep conversation, and like cut out the middle crap.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
And that's not to say that I haven't been pleasantly surprised before. I tend to have preconceived notions sometimes about people and what would be appropriate to talk about. And some of these people, I'm like, oh, well, I can't talk about that because they're just on a different wavelength or whatever.
Yeah.
I've had some really deep, meaningful discourse with, and
Yeah.
it's great when that happens. It's rare, but it's nice to be surprised like that. And I feel like maybe if I were to take that leap more frequently, I might find that I'm more often than not pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, and I mean, how else are you gonna get to the deeper topics? You know, how else are you gonna find a more substantial connection with somebody unless you make that attempt? You know, and don't just try to placate them with just simple little one-liners and shit.
Yeah,
that
and
you think
when
they
you
want to hear.
break it down to like a base level, all the stuff we're talking about is just as arbitrary.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe there's a certain level of discomfort that comes with some of the topics, or some of it may not be quote unquote politically correct or socially encouraged for whatever reason, but I think it's just as arbitrary. Like, why talk about the Seahawks when, not anything against the Seahawks, I love the Seahawks, but it just kind of seems so ho-hum when you could just as easily bring up something with actual substance.
Yeah, and I think it ties into the overall theme of what we're talking about, really, with everything. Is just it'd be so great if people could communicate more openly and more freely, because I think there are these psychological barriers that we put up between everybody else, and that's why probably most of our friends, and it's probably why we're such good friends, is like that there is none of that bullshit. There's no boundaries. Like, we can talk openly and discuss deeper ideas without the worry that we're gonna come off in a certain way, come off in a negative light, come off as crazies.
Yeah, or they'll pass judgment. Yeah, that we're crazy or extremists or whatever.
Yeah, and like you said, and I think it's important what you said, is that more often than not, we'd probably be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
If we did try to engage just random people in these kind of conversations. But the fact remains that there is kind of a protocol of how you communicate with other humans, and I think that's just kind of a symptom of the society that we live in. And I definitely think it's getting better, from what I can tell. If you just, again, looking backwards through time, back in history, it is progressively getting better, and especially with the internet, and there's more open communication. But I guess I would pose the challenge for anybody to, the next time they are in such a situation, bring up something random and interesting rather than something obvious and boring.
Yeah, and back to the whole being pleasantly surprised when we actually bring something up like that, and maybe it's someone we didn't expect it from, gives some kind of insight into the topic.
Yeah, something we hadn't even thought about, maybe.
Yeah, it's kind of humbling to me at times when I realize, okay, here I was having all these preconceived notions and passing judgments of my own that, it wouldn't be acceptable to bring this up because they wouldn't get it or whatever. And then, the chances that I do feel comfortable enough to take and bring something up and someone actually blows my mind, it's humbling. I'm like, I'm an asshole. I'm that guy who's passing the judgments that I'm afraid to bring stuff up around.
And it's good, and we've had experiences like that recently.
Yeah.
With people.
Not to name any names.
You
know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's why I think that we want to stress that We want people to talk to. Come talk with us about things.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't have to be anything that we've talked about. In fact, we'd prefer that it's not, because we don't want to just beat a dead horse to death, so to speak. Just keep going over the same old played out topics and stuff. We want to cover new ground, and we need help from you, the listener, in order to do that.
What interests you? That's what we want to talk about.
Yeah, what makes you tick? What drives you?
Yeah, what motivates you?
And that's not to say if something that you've heard on this cast or the previous one piques your interest, that it's like taboo to bring up something that we've talked about before. If you have some insight into a topic that we've already discussed, we're more than happy to discuss it again. We like to hear ourselves talk.
Yeah.
But case in point, it doesn't have to be anything specific. We just want interesting dialogue and interesting cast of characters to guest on our
and we know you're out there. But to kind of tie back into what we were just talking about, though, with the small talk kind of being kind of this obligatory social thing, there is in psychology there's kind of a way that psychologists look at kind of human thought, and they've kind of divided it into two different kind of schools of thought, I guess. There's abstract thinking and concrete thinking, and I think that's really kind of an interesting way of looking at things, because I think that it should be the goal of everybody to become a more abstract thinker rather than a concrete thinker. And so concrete thinking is probably, and this might be my own conceited judgment of the majority of people, but it's definitely what I come across more often, is concrete thinking. And basically, concrete thinking is thinking only about what's in front of you, kind of the tangible aspects of your life that are right in front of you. What are we having for dinner? When the bills are due, getting the kids to school, the in-laws are coming for dinner tomorrow night. And it's interesting to me how much conversation I feel like is kind of wasted when people are spending their time thinking and discussing matters like that, rather than abstract thinking, which is kind of pulling yourself out a little bit, like kind of a Google map, kind of mapping out, zooming out a little bit, and thinking about grander topics than just yourself or your own immediate people in your life. Thinking about things more on a nationwide basis or a worldwide basis or a universal basis. Talking about it's the ability to think thematically, kind of about where what's going on in the world, what part we play in that, our kind of unique spot in time right now, and being able to understand people that are a lot different than you, and kind of understanding what, I don't know, just kind of where they might be coming from. And this is really a broad concept, so I'm kind of having problems explaining it, but you know what I'm talking about. We've discussed this before.
Yeah, I liked the Google Maps analogy. Kind of takes you outside of yourself and all this stuff that's rolling around in your head. You start to look at the wider picture of how we interact with the people and the world around us, And it seems to me that the farther you get out of yourself, get out into the community, out into the nation, into the world, into the universe, and beyond, the more trivial all of this concrete stuff becomes.
Yeah.
Which is important. It's, I don't know, abstract thinking is kind of just taking a step back from all that concrete stuff and analyzing what it really means, analyzing the bigger picture, contemplating the deeper mysteries and inner workings of life in general.
Yeah, maybe a simple way to break that down is abstract is the whys, and concrete is the hows.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you touched on something interesting there, in that, in that how trivial a lot of concrete thinking is. Trivial matters that concrete thinkers spend an inordinate amount of time dwelling on. And, I guess it's a very, very personal thing. Like, well, if someone really is hung up on some little matter in their life, like what's for dinner and that type of thing, if that brings them some sort of joy to contemplate that all day. And that's, an arbitrary example, but I guess who are we to judge? But I just think that there's so much more out there, and another analogy that I'd make out of that is that focusing on really small trivial matters in your life, you're missing something. You're missing out on something, and basically what you're doing is you're boxing yourself in your family or your friends, whoever you're talking to, but it's like you're in a shoebox of culture,
Mm-hmm.
adrift in an ocean of a lot more interesting things. And if you don't poke your head out and take a look around, I think you are gonna miss something, because I believe, I'm convicted 100% that there's a lot more of a deeper meaning to life, and to ignore that and to not be able to look at our society with a sense of irony and realization that it is kind of happenstance, and it is by no means the law of life, or this is the way things have to be or should be, I think that you're just gonna miss out, and I think that you should branch out and explore things that make you uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't be afraid. That's a big thing. Don't be afraid to explore those mysteries. Don't be afraid to bring up deep subjects in conversation, because we all have a finite amount of time here on this planet. We have a finite amount of words that we can utter before we croak our last breath.
Yeah.
And one day I think a lot of us are going to find we're laying on our deathbed and realize, well, holy shit, look at all this time I wasted focusing on mundane shit, talking about mundane shit. Yeah. And I'm not trying to trivialize anything that's going on in anybody's life, but when you get too deep into your own head, things become a lot bigger than they actually are. And kind of, like you were saying, miss the point, miss out on a lot of things, when really there's so much just to be in awe of, just looking around.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of a Tool lyric. Right in two. Repugnant is the creature who would squander the ability to lift an eye to heaven, conscious of his fleeting time here. Which is a hurdle that a lot of people have to overcome if they're going to have any measure of spiritual growth. Death is an uncomfortable subject for a lot of people who don't like to think about it. A lot of humans don't have the capacity to think about it or comprehend their own death and that it's imminent.
Yeah.
And if we did, we'd all live much more interesting lives, because we would have a sense of urgency. And
make more poignant this moment.
Exactly. That kind of is a natural breaking point into another topic, living in the present moment, as opposed to being too focused on the past or the future, which are essentially abstract ideas. There's always just the now. I tend to think time is kind of a ambiguous thing. It's kind of a man-made construct.
Definitely.
The past is there. We can learn from it, but don't spend too much time there because it'll consume you. In the future, we can hope for it and try and build a better future, but it's never certain. So just put as much of your being into living now, in this moment.
Yeah.
What was that Jerry Cantrell quote that you said the other day?
Oh yeah, I was reading an interview with Jerry Cantrell about the new album, and he had a quote. He said, and this is verbatim, I'm pretty sure. He said, "If you're looking too far back over your shoulder, or if you're looking too far down the road, you're gonna fucking fall down." And it's perfect. And living in the now, and like you were saying, a human life compared to the entirety of time, it's such a fleeting moment. It's such a blink of an eye that I think that allocation of these gifted hours that we have is something that should be carefully considered. And time is an ambiguous human measurement, for something that really can't be measured. And I always like to think of time, and I've brought this up before, but I like to think of time as kind of, it's like a river, and you're kind of going down this river, but you're in a boat or a bubble. You're kind of in the bubble of now, and no matter where you've been, further back in the river or wherever the river is going to take you, you're stuck in this bubble of right now. You can't escape right now.
Yeah.
Everything will be experienced through the present moment. And so if we, again, kind of think more from an abstract perspective on this and understand that we are just these kind of primitive biological life forms, there really is only the present moment. That's all that really exists. The rest is it's a human idea. It's the best we can do with our limited understanding of the nature of existence and reality. So I think it's very, very important to understand that you are stuck in this bubble right now. You're stuck in the bubble of now.
Yeah.
And there's no escaping it. So trying to somehow live your life like that's not the case, it will come to no fruition.
Yeah, that's not to say that the past wasn't real or anything, but the danger of dwelling on it too much is it's over and done with. That moment is past. Whatever you don't like about your past that you're dwelling on, or whatever you wish was still the same about your past that you're dwelling on, it's over. And the point is, you're missing the beauty of the now if we're focusing too much on that. And like the river analogy, if you're always pushing to the future, rowing with the current, trying to get there as fast as you can, what's the end result of that? That's death.
Yeah.
And you realize
exactly.
You got there much quicker than...
Exactly.
I don't know, that's kind of, you were saying something about our primitive life forms as Homo sapiens. Something we kind of talked about a little bit briefly that I think was a really interesting topic would be to jump to the Homo sapiens as a transitional species, and the fact that we're not fully evolved is a common misconception that we are.
Yeah.
And that we're so sophisticated. But really, yeah, technology has improved, but our political structures, religious structures, and everything are the same as they were essentially back in the Dark Ages.
Yeah.
To think we have everything all together is a huge fallacy, and it's dangerous thinking.
I think that, well, I agree, and I think that the idea, just the very notion that there is such thing as a non-transitional species is a fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, we're stuck here at this moment in time, and just because we can't see the future, you know, we can't see where humanity's gonna go, provided that we even do survive this kind of tumultuous time. But we're definitely still a transitional species. We're not at the end of our evolution, and the idea that we ever even will be at the end of evolution. I think that as long as there is existence, and as long as our species does survive, and God willing, we find a way to get off Earth before the sun incinerates it.
Yeah.
And we do branch out into
or
the universe.
Before we consume all the resources.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the sun, that's far off. We'll be lucky to even make it to then.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the concept of God.
Mm-hmm.
I think whatever it is that we call God is the only thing that is a non-transitional species that has that just is.
Reach that point of full evolution.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting to contemplate what is the next step. What is the next step in our evolutionary path? I think a lot of the crumbling of infrastructures and political structures and religious structures and basically any kind of structure that man has created, the fact that it's all crumbling before our eyes right now is evidence of growing pains of our necessary next step of evolution. It's time to evolve.
Yeah, it is. We're no longer in the nascent stage of our existence. I think that it's our responsibility now to evolve, and I think that'll be cerebrally, that'll be through ideas.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're at that point where ideas can evolve at basically the speed of light, the speed of now, as opposed to waiting for biology over hundreds of thousands, millions of years to catch up and vault us on to that next rung on the ladder. Like we can do that at will now.
Yeah.
And
it's just the most. I thought that was an interesting way of putting it. We can do that at will now. The most important part of our next step of evolution is the willingness.
Mm-hmm.
Are we willing?
Yeah.
To take that next step, that plunge? And I think the answer for a lot of people right now is no, and that's why we see so much bad stuff going on, because they're resisting the natural flow of things, the stream.
They're digging their claws into the dirt,
just fighting it.
Yeah, and
it's evolution of ideas is an interesting concept. The imagination is a powerful thing. Ideas are a powerful thing. I'd venture to say more so than concrete facts, because quantum physicists and a lot of cutting-edge science is starting to find that as you get to a subatomic level, these laws of physics are routinely broken.
Oh yeah.
And contradicted. So it kind of enforces in my mind that an idea is more powerful than something we view as fact. I think the next step of human evolution is a willingness and an admittance that we don't know a lot about nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, and to speak to that idea, the idea of how important ideas are, something that I always found interesting was humanity. We've yet to reach the point where we meet that brick wall and we can't evolve, because let's just look back at couple thousand years back to the time of Christ, whatever. The idea that we could have an object in our hand that lets us communicate with anybody else across the planet is booberies. But just the idea that it would have sounded like magic or sorcery to them, a millennium ago, and it essentially is magic, like, because we start out with a goal, to communicate, with people across the planet, and we've reached that goal now. We have the ability in our pockets to access the sum of human knowledge, and that's, that started out with an idea, a what if, and it sounds like magic. It sounds like, what if we had this magical object, this philosopher's stone, that allowed us to do such a thing? And that's one example. That, like, let's put a man on the moon. Like, if you're a caveman out there, like, or just in your backyard, go wander around in the woods and figure out a way to launch somebody to the moon. Like, I mean, come on, it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But we figured out a way to harvest the resources that we have here, the natural resources on Earth, and to kind of compile them in a way that allows us to do magic things like that, like branch out, to go into space, to put a man on the moon, to communicate from a cell phone, computers, medical science, just, we've yet to
drones.
Yeah.
Having remote controlled flight machines that can record conversations and kill people from a distant remote area.
Yeah. Or even just this, a camera, recording a moment in time and saving it,
I think it kind of brings me to a quote that I really like. I'm drawing a blank on who said it, but if you can conceive it, you can achieve it. And right now, a lot of the problem, I think, it's my humble opinion, that humans are misguided, and we're not using this magic, per se, to achieve good things. We're going around doing animalistic shit, blowing people up and taking their stuff, and it's all so primitive. But once we start focusing that energy into solving world hunger issues, unemployment problems, being more efficient and leaving less of a carbon footprint on this planet, those are admirable goals and things that I think the majority of our resources should be put towards, just to name a few examples.
Yeah, it's sad that we have all this technology and these great minds and the stage that we're at in our history, and yet instead of looking at the real problems that we face that are getting off this planet eventually, or an asteroid could hit at any time, like, or let's say the Yellowstone volcano. There's a super volcano beneath Yellowstone Park, and it's due for an eruption. It's been due for an eruption for thousands of years now. It could happen whenever, and it will be the apocalypse. It'll be the end of humanity. It is such a powerful force of nature that it will, for all intents and purposes, end humanity as we know it. So let's stop. We should stop contriving these false dangers like terrorism and all this stupid military bullshit, because that's what it is. And let's start looking at dangers that really threaten us. Let's stop spending our money, resources, and time on creating weapons to go kill other people, and start putting that into how to save our race. Let's figure out a ventilation system somehow that we can prevent an apocalyptic volcanic eruption. Let's start looking at ways that we can deflect asteroids, and keep our planet safe until we're ready to leave. Let's start figuring out a way to leave. It's that's probably a technology that's going to take thousands of years for us to develop, at least hundreds, to get to move our entire species into space and find another home, which we are going to have to do eventually, 100%, if we want to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Those are real problems that face humanity, and we're too busy with our distractions, our pop culture media distractions, like we talked about last time, but most importantly, all the efforts and energy we put into just killing other people in other parts of the world.
Mm-hmm. Let's stop conjuring up threats here on planet Earth from our fellow man and start looking at the real things that could end our existence. And that's not to say a nuclear warhead wouldn't, but I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to do that, because it's essentially suicide. Once one is launched, everyone dies. So let's just stop, cut the crap, and start focusing on the real pressing issues.
Mm-hmm.
I think a common misguided field is the field of Western medicine. I'm not discrediting any doctors, like most people would probably be really sick or dead without them, but pharmaceuticals in particular, talking like antidepressants, talking Ritalin, Adderall, attention deficit treatments, opiate painkillers, treatments that are destructive.
Yeah. It's an obvious and clear dire situation with a lot of the opiate addictions and all that, but the most interesting one to me is antidepressants and this false synthetic form of happiness that they purport to offer. And I think what they do is they turn people into zombies and take away the real ability to feel. And there are if only people would realize that there's alternatives to that. There's natural alternatives to that. You look at Eastern philosophy and like Hindu teachings, meditation, the goal of self-realization. Like this is, a lot of psychological problems are based in this.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to describe it as money or relationship problems. And then all right, yeah, we'll just prescribe you antidepressants and you'll be all better and you'll be on your way.
Yeah.
When you're treating, it's like putting a Band-Aid over, a bullet wound.
Yeah, well, part of the problem, I think, is that so much of our Western culture is instant gratification. Now. And rather than get to the root of the problems, maybe go through some therapy or some meditation regimens, self-realization techniques, people want to take the pill that just, like that quick fix, this will make you feel right as rain. Just, take one a day and no more problems. But what a lot of gets brushed under the rug is take one a day and you might feel like killing yourself or going on a killing spree or whatever else. It might make your depression worse.
I've read that some ridiculous majority, like 90% or something of the major shootings in this country, people have been taking antidepressants. The shooters were on antidepressants, and I think it mitigates the soul. I think it's a soul sapping drug, and I think just the ability. I think people need to know that their problems that they're so caught up in, it's not the end all be all. It's not like you have to, again, the Google Map analogy, like zoom out some and look at everything from a more a broader perspective, and that you are just one human and your partner in this existence, this life, and start taking a more I don't know, just like a historical perspective on things, and be able to look at it, really the full picture of everything, and that will it'll shrink your problem pretty fast if you start getting into that type of stuff. And I think that in and of itself is healing and cathartic, and it opens the door for meditation and self-realization, and you know, it's just it's in stark contrast to the quick fix antidepressant. You know, I think it's a plague. I think I'd use that word to characterize it.
Well, and some of the problem I feel like is the fact that pharmacy is such a big corporation and contributes to so much campaign funding, and essentially ensures their spot in that corporate chain by contributing such massive sums to campaigns, when there are natural cures and treatments that are much more cost effective and much more effective in treating whatever the disorder or disease may be. But these people in the positions of power stand to lose huge sums of money, or stand to lose their positions of power if those things are changed. There's the cannabis oil treatments for cancer patients with aggressive forms of cancer.
And fantastic results so far.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not mainstream. You can't go to your doctor and get it. It's illegal because of those reasons I just mentioned. It would take too much money out of people's pockets and upset the established order in a profound way.
Yeah, and that's, you know, and that's where society evolves. That's the line right there, is that the people have to be willing to make an outcry for things like that, because you know, or else the status quo is just going to continue, and you know, it remains to be seen which way it's going to go.
Kind of seems like a natural segue point into the next topic of something we were talking about a few weeks back. I kind of came up with the idea when I was just sitting around musing, as I tend to do.
Yeah.
Concept versus institution.
Yes.
I'm not here trying to minimize the need for government and structure in our modern society, because with so many people in the world, there is a need for that. But the idea of concept versus institution is like the need for something versus the reality of what it is in our modern world.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, our government with all the corruption and stuff versus the idea of what an ideal, truly representative government would look like.
Yeah.
Or religion versus spirituality, you know. One of the main things I hear against religion is all the horrific things that are carried out in the name of God, the exclusivity, and every religion claiming that they alone have the pathway to God.
Yeah.
Versus the search for God in general. That doesn't mean that the search for God is by any means to be discredited or minimized, but it shows the dangers of what the human institution of religion can do.
Yeah. Yeah, the corruption that becomes evident when humans take an idea,
get united under one banner.
And you know, and profits are to be made with said institution, and again, yeah, we aren't trying to sound nihilistic, and there definitely is a need in a true ideal government and the true spiritual search for, you know, the higher power, the truth of the universe. You know, those are beautiful ideas, and I think they're very, very relevant and very pertinent to our evolution as a species. And like the government's the easy example that I'm totally pro government if it's done the right way, if it's done how it should be done. But it's such a clusterfuck now, and there's just so much money that exchanges hands, and problems aren't really being addressed because it has become a political power game, and it's become too much of a job for a lot of people, I think, and the true goal, the true reason government's there in the first place, I think, is getting overlooked a lot now, and this institution has kind of run amok, and it's really transformed into kind of a beast of authoritarianism, and it's you know, it begs to be reevaluated.
Yeah, it does. I think we're gonna have to call it here. Kind of pick up where we left off next time. We're about out of time here. So, if you would like to be a guest, get a hold of us.
Hit us up.
You have our information. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.